Oh, but he's just.
I wondered about that.
Oh, I know, he wants to move on. I know that.
So Matt, just so you know, you are on Facebook.
I think I got all my signs. I got one. I think I got one more. I gotta get.
It's doing updates as soon as it's
Out in
done.
Forest Grove. I'm hoping that that person just, I'm gonna text him and say, go ahead, it's been outside for.
Telling me that. I didn't know that.
I don't want you to take your
So I
nose.
can come and get it if you want me
Yeah.
to, but,
Even if you assume.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes. No.
Who knows in 2 years?
Guess we should have said that.
All right, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners. The date is Tuesday, August 11th. Our invocation today is by Commissioner Zylstra, and our pledge of allegiance is led by Justin Roebuck. Please rise.
Lord, bless us as we meet to discuss matters of well-being of Ottawa County residents. Impart your wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful and equitable conclusion. May we continue to seek your guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations and grant the gift of your grace in decisions we make for the good of all those who have placed their trust and confidence in our leadership. Give us insight to lead with integrity, that our decisions may reflect what is right and good, and grant us the humility to always seek your will in all that we do and say. We thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justin, would you call the roll, please?
Sir, Mr. Garcia.
Here.
Mr. Baumann.
Here.
Mr. Zylstra. Here. Mr. Dannenberg.
Here.
Mr. Meppelink.
Here.
Mr. Terpstra.
Here.
Mr. Holtvluwer.
Present.
Mr. DeYoung.
Here.
Mr. Kyers. Mr. Bergman.
Here.
And
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Presentations of petitions and communications.
None from us.
Okay, thank you. Next thing on the agenda is public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to address council at the commission at this time, they're welcome to do that. Please limit your time to 3 minutes and give us your name and address. Seeing none, if there's any on Zoom, do you know if there is?
None at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right. The next thing is a public hearing on the proposal of Ottawa County and/or the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office to utilize $39,182 of fund year 2020 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program funds to be used for the Sheriff's Office AED. Mr. Sheriff?
To motion to open the public hearing.
Okay, we need a motion.
Motion to open public hearing.
Second.
Comments or questions? Would you call the roll, please, Justin?
Mr. Zylstra.
Here.
Mr. Fensky.
Yes.
Mr. Baumann.
Yes.
Mr. Garcia.
Yes.
Mr. Meppelink.
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg.
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung.
Yes.
Mr. Holtvluwer.
Yes.
Mr. Terpstra.
Yes.
And Mr. Bergman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now, Mr. Sheriff.
Good. Mr. Chair, board members, good afternoon. Yearly, we receive from the Department of Justice, it's called the JAG grant. This year for 2020, approximately $39,182 was granted to the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office. In the past, we've always used this for specialized equipment within the agency and some other projects such as training. One of the things that did arise is our AED program, the external defibrillators that are carried in the patrol units. Some of our units right now are 15 years plus in age, And we were notified by the Stryker Corporation that our life packs are out of the service date and out of repair dates. Parts no longer available. So the sheriff's office currently has 94 AEDs in service in our patrol cars throughout Ottawa County. Again, they're at the end of their life in service, and the manufacturer will no longer support them. We looked at what projects to apply this money toward, and we felt that the AED program is an important program for our deputies and for our citizens here in Ottawa County. So we are looking at purchasing 28 new AEDs with this grant money, and the AEDs run approximately $1,400 a piece. We've had these for many years now, and they have paid off for our citizens here in Ottawa County. The most recent was in Hudsonville City, where a 55-year-old male was just out walking, collapsed. Our deputies, two of our deputies were right around the corner. They were able to start CPR, deliver a shock from the AED, and the victim of that heart attack is alive and well today. And we've had many of these cases over the years where the deputies have successfully used an AED on a patient with a successful outcome. So again, we would like your approval on this public hearing to move forward to replace the old AEDs and continue this program and this service to our citizens in Ottawa County.
Any questions? What do they do with the old ones?
The old ones are returned.
Okay.
Some of them are used for parts in the mission field, from what I was reading from the Stryker Corporation, which is out of Kalamazoo. And some of them are totally just destroyed and depleted.
Okay. All right.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Supported. And moved and supported. Comments or questions? Justin, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Meppelink,
Yes.
or
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Terpstra,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Fensky,
Yes.
and Mr. Bergman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
What were you going to say?
Well, Mr. Zylstra and I just
Oh,
made eye
I was just
contact. I
even-
didn't
I
know
just-
I didn't know if you had a
We have
question.
94 currently, and there's 28 new ones coming in. How many patrol cars are there?
Approximately, well, out of the patrol cars, there's approximately 100 throughout the county. That's
So it's
county
gonna
funded,
kind of pick and
and
choose for the time being as to where they end up, or how is that gonna?
we'll go by the age of the unit,
Okay.
which needs to be replaced first. And this does count. We'll probably start with our road funded cars first, and then into the contract cars. So please realize that out of that large fleet, almost 3/4 of those are contract vehicles through our contracts. They are not county funded vehicles. Just a very small portion of that fleet.
Sorry, Doug. I didn't.
Oh, no worries. I'll
Should have looked
stick
at.
my hand up higher this time.
Yep. Next thing on the agenda is communication from county staff. And we have a public health update from Lisa. Is she on?
Lisa is currently not on.
Want to come back to her?
Back to the additional or the second public comment.
Okay, all right. Do we have to come out of the public hearing?
I believe
did.
so.
Wasn't
I
that
mean-
what the motion was by Mr. Holtler?
Was it? Okay. Okay, good. That
made a
makes more
motion. I
sense
think it was
then.
to come out of public hearing.
Okay, well, I don't know. I thought it was to approve.
We can approve it
John's text.
until the next
I don't think
meeting,
he's
correct?
looking for approval today.
All right.
It's just a
Should
public
we
hearing.
do it again?
And approve it on the same day as a public hearing.
Okay.
Public hearing. It's just a public hearing, and we do note that our county board supports or approves the funds to go into the project.
So it's not coming back.
Should we have a motion to come out of the public hearing?
If
Is that
Mr.
what you'd like?
Holtler is willing to make that motion, I think
I'll
we
make
did.
that motion.
Okay. So I think we're set then.
Okay, good. All right.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
It's all right. All right. All right, approval of the agenda. Can I get a
So
motion,
moved.
please?
Support.
Supported. Comments or questions? Can we just have a roll call vote, or can we just say
Can you do a voice vote on the
voice
agenda?
vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next thing is action and reports, consent resolutions. Mr. Fenske.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move to approve consent resolutions 1 and 2.
Support.
Been supported. Comments or questions? Would you call the roll, please, Justin?
Mr. Terpstra,
Yes.
Mr. Holtvluwer,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Meplink,
Yes.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Fenske,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
and Mr. Bergman.
Next thing is action items, none, and appointments. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, we have several appointments. I would, regarding the Community Action Agency Advisory Board, I'd like to place into nomination to fill one vacancy, Danielle Weeks for public sector vacancy beginning immediately and ending December 31st, 2022.
Support.
Moved and supported. Comments or questions? Would you call the roll, please, Justin?
Holtvluwer,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Terpstra,
Yes.
Mr. Meplink,
Yes.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Fenske,
Yes.
and Mr. Bergman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Also for the Officers Compensation Commission, I'd like to place into motion to fill one position with Richard Martinez as a member, basically vacancy beginning immediately and ending December 31st, 2023.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Comments or questions?
Quick question. John, whose vacancy is he filling?
Rick Martinez.
It's one of those where we've
I
had
think it's Lori.
several vacancies,
I
right?
believe it was Lori Larson, but let me just, yeah, Lori Larson, she termed out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, various vacancies on that
Couple of
committee. yeah,
vacancies
yeah.
still vacant, I
Yeah.
believe, as
Yep.
well. So if you know anyone, please, you recommend them.
Yep.
Was there a vote on that one yet?
Yep, it's been moved. You want to call it?
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Fenske, Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Terpstra,
Yes.
Mr. Meplink,
Yes.
Mr. Holtvluwer,
Yes.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
and Mr. Bergman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, regarding the Ottawa County Economic Development Corporation Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, I'd like to place into nomination the name of Michael Sandoval to fill one position beginning immediately and ending December 31st, 2020.
Second that.
Seconded. Comments or questions? Justin, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Fenske,
Yes.
Yes.
Terpstra,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Holtvluwer,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
and Mr. Bergman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Regarding the Community Mental Health Board, I'd like to place into nomination the names of David Parneen to fill one general vacancy beginning immediately and ending March 31st, 2022.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Comments or questions? Justin, would you call the roll, please?
So on the CMH.
Yeah, can't we vote on?
board,
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, you know,
Public.
also Beth Larson, as you notice, there's another name of Michael Sandoval who has been nominated and approved for another position. So we are recommending David Parneen and Beth Larson.
Yeah, I think that Julie Kenyon should also be starred.
Well, except
Yes.
that she's a primary consumer vacancy, not a general public
looking at the
vacancy.
general public. vacancy.
Right, I
Okay.
just, well, since you a star behind Julie.
Yeah, there
There
should
should've
be
been.
one there because that is recommended. So Dave Parnin and Beth Larson are being recommended for the general public vacancy and Julie Kenyon's being recommended for the primary consumer vacancy.
And you want to make that all one motion?
Yeah,
Okay.
right, we can make it all
All right.
into one. I was going to separate them, but we can go ahead and do all three.
I will support all three, so.
Okay, all right. Any comments or questions?
So just
We
to,
need,
just to clarify, is there one more candidate than
Yes.
Yes.
Then recommended.
Michael
people-
Sandoval is the fourth candidate who is not being recommended for the CMH.
But there's,
We still have to vote
We vote on it.
either for Beth or Michael.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
So we got to vote by names.
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I will call the roll and then you can just indicate your choice between Sandoval and Larson. Okay. Mr.
Yes.
Dan.
Well,
Oh.
see, I wonder,
We got all-
should we vote for two, David and Beth?
Yeah.
We're going to vote for three,
Three.
right?
Oh, because you've got different terms.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Different terms for David.
We should do
Beth
each
also.
one,
Right.
Let's do
do
one
each
at a
one
time.
separate.
Well, let me start all over, please. Okay.
I know.
Let me
It is
start all
confusing
over.
because there's two
Uh,
names listed under one.
So for the Community Mental Health Board, we're going to do one individual, I mean, okay, we're going to do them individually. To place into nomination to fill one position, David Parneen, that for the general public vacancy beginning immediately and ending March 31st, 2022.
Is there a second
Support.
for that? Okay.
Okay.
All right, Justin, would you call that roll, please?
Yes. And this is for Mr. Parnin, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Hopler,
Yes.
Mr. Meplink,
Yes.
Mr. Terpstra,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Fensky,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Bauman,
Yes.
and Mr. Bergman.
The Community Mental Health Board, I put into nomination the names of Beth Larson, Michael Sandoval. The interview committee is recommending Beth Larson at this time to fill one general public vacancy beginning immediately and ending March 31st, 2023.
Or,
Moved
Well,
and supported.
Yeah, we need to do a name, right? Oh, I'm sorry, that was the support.
Okay.
Justin?
Mr. Dannenberg,
Larson.
Mr. Bauman,
Larson.
Mr. Fensky,
Larson.
Mr. Meplink, Mr. Terpstra, Mr. Garcia,
Larson.
Mr. DeYoung,
Larson.
Mr. Hopler,
Larson.
Mr. Zylstra,
Larson.
and Mr. Bergman.
Larson.
And Beth Larson is the candidate. winning
Also, for the Community Mental Health Board, we also are putting into nomination the name of Julie Kenyon to fill one primary consumer vacancy beginning immediately and ending March 31st, 2023.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Comments or questions? Justin, would you call the roll, please?
candidate. Mr. Fensky,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Hopler,
Yes.
Mr. Bauman,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Meplink,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Terpstra,
Yes.
and Mr. Bergman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And from the Parks and Recreation Commission, we are placing into nomination to select Lucas Hill to fill one public vacancy beginning immediately and ending December 31st, 2020.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Comments or questions? So this is a pretty short,
Yeah.
I mean, only a couple of months.
This
Is
was,
that just to fill?
this is
someone-
replacing David
Fill
Van
the vacancy.
Ginhoven's seat.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Okay, all
Okay,
right.
thank you.
okay. All right, that explains it. Okay. All right, Justin, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Fensky,
Yes.
Mr. Bauman,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Meplink,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Hopler,
Yes.
Mr. Terpstra,
Yes.
and Mr. Bergman.
Yes. Yes.
Motion passes.
We
All
got
right.
over that one.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Under discussion items, tax dollar usage and distribution report presentation.
Ian Rising is our intern in the administrator's office, and Al had asked him to put together this report and presentation. So Ian, take it away.
As he said, my name is Ian Risinga, and I'm an intern for the administrator. County has developed a positive reputation for high-quality financial stewardship and effective communication with both citizens and local units.
Sir, could you speak a little closer to the mic?
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Both citizens and local units across the county. In that spirit, this report, which was originally developed by the administrator's office in 2013, has been updated and enhanced to continue that mission. In the past, questions have been raised as to whether citizens receive proportional benefits from the services that they pay via taxes to the county. This report aims to answer these questions. Overall, this report will review basic information about property taxes, compare Ottawa County's property tax levy with other Michigan counties, describe the various funding sources of the county, detail the revenues and expenditures of the county's general fund, calculate the net cost to taxpayers for various county functions, and describe the benefits associated with each function, as well as assess the level of availability to county residents. Just some property tax basics. As we know, the property tax is one of the most important revenue sources of local governments across Michigan. It is this basic funding source that most local government services, including those provided by the county, taxpayers entrust money to government institutions to be used for public purposes that would likely not otherwise be provided. Other sources of funding do exist and are utilized when possible, but in 2019 alone, an estimated $440 million was levied in property taxes within Ottawa County and used to support different taxing entities. Value taxable property is divided into several different subcategories. Real property includes land and any improvements that have been made. There are 6 classes of real property: agricultural, commercial, developmental, industrial, residential, and timber cutover. Alternatively, personal property includes tangible items such as equipment and furnishings, which applies almost exclusively to businesses. Starting in 2014, the state of Michigan began phasing out the personal property tax to attract manufacturers who rely on expensive capital investments in tools and other equipment. This is a figure that shows the distribution of property within Ottawa County. I would note that there's a substantial majority of residential in the tax base of Ottawa County. In 1994, Michigan voters enacted Proposal A, which significantly changed the way property taxes were calculated. As a result of the referendum, each parcel now possesses 2 values: assessed value and taxable value. The concept of taxable value was created in response to rapidly increasing assessed values, which were used to calculate an owner's property tax liability. This figure just shows that that blue line is the actual taxable value, whereas the red line illustrates the assessed value. Because of Proposal A, there is a 21% difference between the two. So essentially, property owners save 21% of what they could have been taxed. Moving base to rate, the county's total millage rate in 2019 was 5.449 mills, which raised approximately $63.3 million in property tax revenue for the county. It is important to note that this is a calculation of 5 subrates illustrated on the chart. I would like to know also that if you look at the top row, operating levy, that is the lowest when compared to neighboring counties and counties of similar size. It is also the 5th lowest in Michigan's 83 counties. Out of the $440 million levied in property taxes throughout Ottawa County, in 2019, only about 15% was collected by the county. Almost 2/3 were collected for school systems. As you can see, intermediate school districts, state education tax, and local schools. This is also just an average because obviously local units would vary the tax rates depending on where people live. Tax liability distribution. One of the common questions mentioned earlier is whether the distribution of property tax is fair between cities, villages, and townships in the county. To answer this, the absolute and relative values for each unit's levy and population are shown in the table. In summary, the difference between township, city, and cities when it comes to distribution of property and population is within a single %. I would like to note that if you look at last year's chart, which this shows, it would appear that 10,000 people just randomly disappeared from the county. That's not actually the case. There's a slight error in how Holland City was calculated. They included the part of Holland that was located in Allegan County. And so in this one, that is allocated for. County fund structure. This report also includes some explanation of the county's basic fund structure. The county currently maintains 38 different major and non-major funds, but only 3 of those 38 functions receive property tax dollars. However, transfers then can and are made to others to help finance the county's various functions and services. Revenues. In 2019, the county collected $170 million in total revenue for governmental funds. This figure shows the different possible revenue sources for all governmental funds, including the general fund. The general fund has the same revenue sources as the other government funds. However, the distribution among these sources is slightly different. The last section of this report uses information from the 2020 budget to formulate a percentage of the $42.5 million tax revenue acquired by the 3.9 general operating levy for funding county departments. I understand that this is a bit dense, this chart. In the actual document that will be on the website, it'll go by department, so you can see the specific numbers for each department. Also on the left, it looks a little confusing, I was told earlier. That is just a percentage of each department that is actually funded by the general operating levy. This figure demonstrates the distribution and usage amounts reported in the previous pages. From this data, we can conclude that over 4/5 of the amount of taxes collected for general operations in 2020 was associated with public safety, health and welfare, judicial activities of the county government. This is expected as these are the major responsibilities of county governments statewide. Having looked at county revenues and expenditures, the report moves into discussion over the overarching question, to what extent do citizens benefit from the services they pay for in taxes? First, it is important to note a few distinctions among the services that county provides to its citizens. The first of which is between services that provide observed and unobserved benefits. Most often people do not worry nor observe the effectiveness of county services. While they may not be observing any benefits, they are certainly experiencing them. Only in times when there's a clear impediment on daily function do citizens pay close attention to and ask questions for the respective governing units. Another distinction can be made between services that provide actual and potential benefits. Unlike some local units, the county does not directly provide services such as public utilities, for example, electricity and water. These utilities deliver actual benefits because citizens use electricity and water daily. Many of the services that the county provides do not benefit citizens until they need them.
Yeah, Ian.
Yep.
Quick question. Yeah, we talked last Thursday about private versus public benefit. How does that kind of fit into this rubric? Maybe that's a question for Doug. Does it fit at all in this rubric or not really?
Can you say that one more time?
I think he's asking, how do you split private versus public benefit?
Right, because we talked a little bit about that on Thursday and just kind of like, how does that overlay into here or does it not overlay at all?
I don't know that we've ever tried to split out, for example, the private services or individual services that residents receive, whether from the sheriff's department or parks department or anything like that.
Okay.
I don't think we've ever tried to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and most of this data is taken from the equalization report, apportionment report, the comprehensive annual fiscal report, and the budget. So all these numbers are taken directly from there. The third and final distinction is between direct and indirect benefits. Direct benefits are those services from which citizens benefit directly. This can be any service that a citizen has direct access to However, other entities such as courts and the county jail provide indirect benefits to all citizens. Many individuals will never set foot in a courtroom nor a jail cell, but they indirectly benefit from the safety and security that these entities provide. Just to summarize, I'm not going to go through all of these, but there's a few notable ones. Number 2, taxes make up approximately 38% of the county's total revenue, whereas 48% comes from intergovernmental sources. And number 4, township and cities are taxed proportionally within a fraction of a percent when comparing population and tax share. In conclusion, the most recent Ottawa County survey showed that 72% of residents reported that their tax burden was fair for the services they received in Ottawa County. This is a testament to the effectiveness and success of policies developed by this governing body. Any questions?
Mr. Reisinger, I wondered, do we know what percentage of property taxes are exempt from taxes? Like, you know, such like churches and even like the Parks Department really doesn't get taxed.
I did not cover it in this report, but
Okay.
I can definitely find out.
It'd be kind of interesting if
Yeah.
every entity was taxed, what sort of taxes would one gain if there was hypothetically taxes on, you know.
I think that was asked of the Equalization Department a couple years ago as part of the strategic plan, and Mike got back to us that they don't
Assess.
Yeah, they wouldn't even
They
be.
don't assess. so
Yeah, they
it's-
don't keep that record, so it was hard for them to
Okay.
come up with that information.
I would assume when going back to the taxable and assessed values that it would be taken like out of the taxable value. So in the assessed, it'd be somewhere in that buffer between the assessed and the taxable value. I wouldn't say that's exact because of proposal A, but somewhere in the middle there is the actual amount of property in Ottawa County.
I only mention that because a lot of times, you know, everybody's going to be, you know, they always seek out being tax exempt. And, you know, at some point in time, there's going to be more tax exempt than there's going to be taxable. And so that's just a hypothetical thought. But I mean, if everybody wants to be tax exempt, you know, it's just like the residents and businesses will be the only people paying.
I think municipalities probably have a handle on that. I know Ferrisburg does, because when we purchased Ottawa Sands, they went from, I think 20% or 21% to 27% of their total land was tax exempt because of that purchase of taxable
That can
property.
be a big impact in that particular case.
Yes, it did. Yeah. So when we purchase parkland, for instance, it takes it off the tax roll. And so I would imagine that some other municipalities might have that information as well.
It's just difficult to calculate though, because you're talking about raw percentage of land, but it doesn't get assessed. So the value of that's never plugged in. So you could calculate what the alternative tax. The only entity that does that, to my knowledge, is the state and federal government. There is a
Payment in lieu of.
payment in lieu of taxes where they try to calculate the value of national forest in your, because some counties would be just stripped of all revenue if they didn't pay for that national forest.
Right.
And so they try to assess their own value of their exempt property and then make a payment in lieu of that. But other than that, it's hard to put a number on that because a church, for example, is never assessed.
Schools aren't assessed.
School isn't assessed, yeah.
My property.
And schools a lot of times have more property than just their school building. They have, you know, parking lots, they have playgrounds, they have football fields, they have
Property that they buy for future use.
Yes,
or
right.
investment
Right.
sake, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Interestingly,
Universities.
on that point, I represented an assessor who was fired by a city because he assessed their undeveloped land, which politically was a stupid thing to do, but it was actually the right legal thing to do. So if you buy land and you're not, same with the county. If we don't use it, we should be assessed. Okay, so if it's not being used for parks, it's just being inventoried, it gets on the tax rolls. And we have that now with our investment property in the 231 Terminus.
Yeah.
Even though we own it, that is presently not being used for public purpose, and it will be assessed, and you will pay, probably for the first time in Ottawa County's history, some property taxes on property you own.
But Doug, what about non-taxable property? That is a building or whatever that is leased out to someone else, and there's an income stream off that property. Should that property be taxed?
Yes. Yeah.
So if a city owns I don't know, event center, let's just say, and they lease it out, you're saying technically speaking, they should be paying taxes on that event center?
Yes.
I should probably let the city manager of Grand Haven know that the community center should be taxed, right?
Don't ask me to comment on that.
I'll bet you it's not.
Do that by phone though, right?
Okay. All right. Do we have it? Yeah, Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, I have a couple of questions for Ian, who's doing the presentation.
right.
I know that you're probably the only intern that's had to work during a pandemic environment.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what experiences you're going to be taking away from here that none of your classmates probably, well, yeah, but they'll experience it as well. But what are some of the experiences that you'll be able to take with you in case you ever come into a position like Al's or John's?
I think the biggest thing I've learned in general, I don't think people realize, just regular students realize like how much county government actually encompasses. And I'm towards the end of my bachelor's degree, and I don't think that's covered well enough, probably because there may not be as many former county administrators that teach. But I would think that's my biggest takeaway. And just how comprehensive Al is as an administrator, I think I've learned a lot.
What do you think of John? No, I'm kidding. Good, thank you.
Just a quick question on points 5 and 6. One of the questions I always get in the city of Holland kind of goes to available and accessible about policing. Obviously, we provide our own public safety, but at the same time, we pay into, and I think it's half of public safety comes from property taxes. So how does it actually work then?
I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
So I represent the city of Holland.
Yeah, I know, but
And
you said points.
We
5 and
we
6.
pay for our own public safety, but yet we are also a city of Holland residents. We're also paying into the county and paying for the sheriff's department as well. So how does that overlap? I mean, are we paying for both sheriff and for Holland Police Department, or how does that work?
I think that the sheriff would probably better understand this, but I believe the sheriff is contracted out for certain functions.
Well, I think for some, and the sheriff can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, there's certain, you have general road patrol, the city has its own department, but if there's a major, and sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a major homicide investigation, do we provide that type of service to them?
Break it down, it goes all the way from, road patrol assistance, the jail facility, we house for the Holland City, the court building down in there. So there is a lot of crossover of sheriff services, and we do provide support. And I could get into probably an hour-long conversation with you on that question, because that's come up over the last 20 years.
Obviously, whenever I bump into somebody, they're like, hey, we're paying for 2 things, aren't we? And I think you probably had that question living in the,
I think you and I discussed it
Right.
2 years ago when we came in.
Yeah, I still don't have that clear, obviously, so.
That question's been around for the 30 years that I've been here. And I know other sheriffs around the state also get that same question.
Let me just say that the decision of the overlap is entirely the decision of the city. So for example, on district court, Holland could have its own district court. It's chosen not to. and we provide that district court service. Holland could choose not to have law enforcement. We would provide, that service. So, there is overlap. There's no
Right, but the
question
fact
about
that
it.
we
The
don't.
overlap is in the control of the municipality.
Sure, I mean, but the fact that we don't choose, that we choose to provide our own public service, public safety in a sense, lightens the load on the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there is, yeah, I guess there.
Like my private school tuition saved the state of Michigan a lot of money, and I didn't get any credit for it.
Okay.
Right.
And I would say it's one of those indirect benefits that, as I can see what Doug is saying, because I live in Grand Haven City and we pay for our public service safety department, but we also pay for the sheriff's department. However, if there is a problem in the city, we have the sheriff's department that's over in Spring Lake and Ferrisburg that comes in on a Saturday night to help us out. And so we have these reciprocal agreements that
And we've taken over the call answering and dispatch too.
Yep.
Joe has a question.
yes.
Roger. Wouldn't that hold true, Sheriff, for the contract officers? I mean, Holland Township contracts, how many officers?
Yeah, with our contracts with Holland Township, with the amount of officers that we have there, the population of Holland Township is larger than Holland City. When you look at the call volume between the two, we handle a lot more calls for service with about a quarter of the staff that Holland Police Department handles in the city of Holland. So again,
But the township,
has
they pay with their taxes for the contract officers.
Right. Plus, we also have the core road patrol deputies there. So actually, in the sheriff's office, you have approximately 32 to 34 core road patrol funded, county funded deputies. Take the jail out of that equation. When you look at all of our other contracts, again, we have a large contract base of deputies paid for by the townships that have chosen to have that extra policing in their townships. So on a given time, Holland Township area, basically 32nd Street north to, you can go probably almost to Port Sheldon on an average day, from the lake shore into about 64th Avenue. Contract deputy wise, road patrol deputy wise, there's 2 deputies that cover that entire area. So Holland Township, as their growth has continued to grow, Park Township, even Port Sheldon, they partnership with us with the school officers. They've chosen to enhance their policing services with the contracts. So, but again, when you do compare apples to apples with what we do, I'm pretty proud of the fact that the sheriff's office does the amount of work they do in Holland Township with a less amount of staff. And again, under our contracts, we also supply from the county part of it, all of the detective services, clerical services, that's a benefit to the contracts. So again, contracting, it's been very successful. I think if you talk to Hudsonville, Coopersville, Spring Lake, and Ferrisburg, many of them will tell you that model for them has saved them money. And we are also recognized not statewide, but also nationally for the amount of contracting we do and how we do it and the services that we're able to provide to the community.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, we have. Yeah, Lisa's back on. Right. So, Ian, thank you for your report. And I think what we'll do is hold off on the report of the county administrator and go right to Lisa. Can we do that? All right. Justin, you can.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Lisa, are you there?
I am.
Hi,
Good
Lisa.
afternoon.
You're up.
All right. Well, thank you for having me today. I'm just going to give you a little situation report regarding COVID-19 in Ottawa County. So despite a few spikes reported in the last couple of days, our overall trend in new cases over the last 2 weeks has been stable. On average, we're seeing about 17 new cases per day. The average cases, when we talk about age demographics, is the age is creeping up a little bit from 37 years to 41 years of age in the last 2 weeks. About 19.4% of new cases reported within the last 2 weeks were aged 0 to 19 years, which is trending up a little bit. 22.7% of the cases were aged 20 to 19. Oh, sorry, that doesn't make sense. 20 to 29 years, and the rest were 30 and above in age group. In recent weeks, there's been a lot of conversation about COVID-19 in children and how to best reopen schools. I think I mentioned in the last meeting that we've been spending a considerable amount of time working with our districts and our parochial or private school sector so that they can reopen safely. Our local data shows that all age groups are susceptible to developing COVID-19. Although it's important to note that certain factors put some age groups at higher risk of exposure and severe outcomes. And I think you're all aware that social behavior, occupation in some cases, and existing underlying conditions can really make someone predisposed to a higher risk for getting COVID and having severe symptoms. Testing volumes and testing positivity have been stable over the past 2 weeks. Within the last 7 days, we've had an average of about 750 tests completed daily. And our test positivity is in the medium range. It's kind of stable. So again, finally, we are working a lot right now with our school sector and our agricultural sector. In fact, I was a little late today, and I apologize for that because I was on a call with a number of community partners to talk about testing and working with our seasonal agricultural workers to make sure that they have access to testing, access to healthcare, access to wages in the event that they become sick. And we've been working on isolation and quarantine sheltering. Maybe you saw in the paper that there was a Camp Pandalouan up in Montague, which is in Muskegon County. That is going to be a shared isolation and quarantine shelter for seasonal agricultural workers who need to be isolated. And so we're trying to do the best we can to keep things efficient, but yet really work hard to make sure people are safe. So on that note, I will open it up to any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Lisa? Doesn't look like it, Lisa.
Okay,
You're doing a good job for us. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you. And I will say too, I've been really concerned about the level of work and stress put on the team at the health department. And today we had someone from the Employee Assistance Center come down and do 2 sessions. We had it outside. Of course, we were all masked and 6 feet apart in lawn chairs, and he provided us with a lot of support on how to ensure that people are taking care of themselves during this crisis, and really focusing on staying safe and healthy. And so also Al did a really, really nice little video message to all the staff, and we sent that out and put it in everybody's mailbox so that when they got back from the session, it was there waiting for them. And I've already gotten tremendous feedback, and Al's message was not just from Al, but it was on behalf of the board too. And I just want to tell you how much I and my whole entire team have appreciated the support that you've provided throughout this whole event. So thank you very much. We just couldn't do this without you.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, report of the county administrator or his assistant.
It's budget time, so the CIP will be sent over next week to the Planning and Policy Committee and the Finance Committee, and the budget will be presented to Finance next week. And then we'll be scheduling a public hearing, the first meeting in September, and then final adoption by the board would be the second meeting in September. On the Family Justice Center project, Doug and I and Lisa Delgallo, our outside legal counsel, have reached a verbal agreement with Granger DLZ on the IPD contract. So that's really good news. And we are going to be bringing to you and the building authority that contract. We're just doing some cleanup issues with it. along with the project budget for that as well. So that project is proceeding along. And we heard a nice presentation from HR on the Higher Reach program, where HR has done a pilot study to really sift through all the applications and screen them and then present 6, 8 finalists for departments for clerical level positions. And it was designed to provide more positive outcomes, less turnover, more diversity, and based on the survey results, it appears right now that it's working. We're going to continue that pilot program and maybe add some different job classifications. But at least some of the initial survey work coming back has been pretty positive about that. So that's what's going on.
Any questions for John? If not, the next thing is general information, comments, and meetings attended.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. I think it's for Justin or maybe for John. I got a lot of phone calls or messages about poll workers on Tuesday.
About what?
Poll workers.
Oh, poll workers.
Yes, and especially in one area, and Justin and I have talked about this, not wearing masks. I mean, my understanding is the poll is a public place, and just wondering what the expectation will be for November. I mean,
go ahead, Justin.
as I understand it, maybe the executive order will not be in effect through November, but it's hard to imagine that will be the case. I can only assume that will continue to be the case. If it is the case, what will our response be to precincts that are not enforcing that?
Yeah, this is definitely something that's come up, obviously, on Election Day and a little bit after Election Day. Comments from some individuals who were concerned to see some of the election workers across the county not wearing masks in the precincts. I believe it was a significant minority in that case, but
I think it sticks out in a sense even more when people are just like, well,
right,
why is this in my precinct?
Right.
And, what is the motivation? And,
it's been a little bit of a struggle for us because the executive order specifically exempted voters from obviously needing to wear a mask or being required to wear a mask. But the executive order didn't touch on election workers. It was just assumed based on previous EOs that they needed to, and the Secretary of State issued specific guidance instructing that. And obviously we, in our role under the Secretary of State and over the local municipalities did the same thing, essentially said this is required. The medical exemption still applies just like it would to anyone else in any other public building. So that's been a little challenging to navigate. Election workers are hired by local clerks. So they are paid and hired by municipalities. We have had conversations with our local clerks on that issue, really wanting to double down and making sure that people are, and if people have concerns, my view is that, there are appropriate places that we could place an election worker who has a concern and not able to wear a mask. We're also able to do some recruitment, and we volunteered that. So I would definitely encourage folks who have a concern, though, to reach out to their local clerks to kind of stress that point.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? If not, this is the second time for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the commission at this time? Is there anyone on Zoom?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Justin, how come your picture is without a mask on that?
Hold on, let me end the live recording. That's a good question, man. I gotta update